At this time, we open the floor for public comments. Anyone who has public comments they'd like to state, come to the podium, please. State your name, your county of residence, and your concern.
Hi, my name is David James from Wicomico County. I just got a question, I guess that she's already gone. When they were talking about this FEMA relief for some of these houses, what has to be the stipulation for them to remove these houses? Because there's a lot of these houses, dilapidated houses down there that are on top of like drainage ditches. I've actually heard this from a lot of the people, and I'm talking about the west side, down Bival and those areas. These old houses are on top of ditches. There's a house that's actually an old church right across from the old day sports shop, and it's like you can see it as soon as you go down there, and it's literally on top of Dennis Creek. So would that qualify for it? Because if it is, that would be the answer to some prayers down there. Just saying. I'm done. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Lynette Kenny, and I live on Porter Mill Road. As you know, it's been 3 years. I feel like you're old friends since we've been coming here and talking about, and I almost hate to say it again, but the open top storage tank on Porter Mill Road. And when we first came here, we came with suppositions, with what we thought might happen. And for the past 3 years, since this tank went into operation in March of 2020, those became realities. The traffic has been not pleasant. The odor has not been pleasant. It's been, what we said originally is what has occurred. And we do appreciate the efforts for you to try to find a workable solution to the complex issue of regulating future tank construction. And we understand that there are many stakeholders in this matter, and our voice is only one. And however, as residents of Wicomico County who are living with the consequences of poor planning, we find it imperative that adequate legislation is enacted so we nor any other citizen is subjected to this highly objectionable nuisance. Although we still contend that these storage facilities should be placed in the industrial zone, we recognize that that ship has probably sailed so far as any legislation is concerned. You do have the authority and the power to put it in the industrial zone. You are the county council, and I know you get advice from other agencies, but you can override that and put it in the industrial zone. But considering that you don't, we're going on to Plan B. And Plan B is that we have reviewed the draft legislation, the most recent we had, which was back in May, I think, April that we got it. That was proposed by the Planning Commission, and we respectfully submit that it does not offer the needed safeguards to prevent another situation such as ours. The legislation needs to include, at a minimum, the following additional requirements to protect all residents throughout the county. And I've got a whole list of stuff here. I'm just going to touch on it real quick. So far as neighborhood safeguards go, consider setbacks. We've got some suggestions here. The size of the site and acreage, limits of number of tanks or lagoons per 10 acres, no clustering, storage facilities to be built on land where the DAF is applied, DAF waste is applied. We're going on to the traffic safeguards. Porter Mill has been, it's questionable. I've heard that some people in the county have considered it a major collector road. When you look up Porter Mill in the comprehensive plan, it is a minor collector road. And we're asking you to use road designations from the Federal Highway Functional Classification System to adequately designate the roads where these tanks and facilities can be built. It should be on a major collector road, not something minor. I've attached some pictures at the back of the packet, and you can see that even now, in May and June, and keep in mind, you were told, and we were told originally, that this was a 3.5-month venture. Not so. It is all year long, and you can see what it's doing to the road. And this needs to be taken into consideration when you permit other such facilities. There should be properly engineered access ways. Look at the pictures again. There should be no stacking of trucks ever on the road, especially these narrow country roads. And there's pictures there. These pictures were taken, I think, in May, of trucks entering the site, trucks stacked up on the site, on the road. And this should never occur. And you should take safeguards to see that this doesn't occur. The protection of water, air, and soil. Everything should be under MDE compliance with MDE oversight. Catchment basement for spillage can't be built over the paleo channel or wellhead protection areas. There should be proper grading of the sites. Site inspections, and this is important because this site was never inspected prior to the building permit being issued. There should be a site inspection of all offices or agencies before any building or zoning use or other permit is issued. That's crucial. Site security. All storage facilities to be built to commercial construction standards, not just thrown up and no oversight, hardly whatsoever, with the relevant commercial permits required. Fencing, something as simple as fencing. Nearby trees should not be in close proximity so that they could breach the facility should they fall. And you go look at this and you can see right where that tank is, if there's real possibility of trees falling into it. And the protection of taxpayers, because we pay, our taxes pay to clean up these roads, to repair the damage that's done, and there are no taxes received from this location. Facts to keep in mind: store the waste where it's produced. Another one is with Purdue under contract with Bioenergy DevCo near Seaford to take all of the DAF waste that they produce in Wicomico County. Why should we be the depository of out-of-county and out-of-state waste? Nothing in this county is going to be stored, that's generated in this county will be stored in this county once Purdue is able to send everything over to Bioenergy DevCo. If the county designates this as an ag use, as erroneously occurred in the case of the approval of the Porter Mill facility, it is all non-taxable. Big money is made there, and it's all non-taxable. I've included Talbot County's regulations in your packet regarding an organic resource recovery facility. Notice that these regulations require strict odor controls. Why can't we do the same? If Talbot County can do it, why can't we? The owner of the tank has stated that most of the DAF waste comes from Valley Protein. And I don't have to tell you, and I'm sure you've all heard, about the problems that have occurred at Valley Protein. We don't need their waste in our county. And also keep in mind that Valley Protein has the intentions to increase their rendering process fourfold. Where's all that waste going? If things remain as they are, then they will go straight to Wicomico County in new tanks. So far as going through the Board of Zoning Appeals, that's fine. But what's going to tell the Board of Zoning Appeals what regulations to go by? It'll be very arbitrary. It says, we as a neighborhood are appreciative of the moratorium on new tank construction until you can study and review this issue for changes in the county code. The information revealed through the Public Information Acts, which we have required, shows that as late as December 2019, after construction on the tank had begun, the Maryland Department of Environment and the Maryland Department of Agriculture still had not determined this storage tank to be agriculture in nature. In fact, the MDA, and I spoke with some people there, wanted absolutely nothing to do with the issue of storage. Well, how then did our county planning and zoning make such a quick and definitive designation? It took them only a matter of 2 weeks to approve the permit from the time that it was submitted. There were no site visits, and issuance was granted without permits from any of the normal construction oversight agencies. This cannot be allowed to happen again. The only way to assure that this is to place reasonable restrictions to protect the health, welfare, and property of citizens of this county. Even the majority of those in agriculture consider the practice of storage of DAF waste material to be commercial or industrial in nature. While we would welcome the opportunity to bring our concerns before the Board of Zoning Appeals in future tank matters, they must have codified restrictions in place to absolutely protect the residents of this county. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Kenny.
Hi everyone. So my name is Alexis Davis. I'm from Wicomico County, and I recently graduated from Parkside High School. I'll be attending SU in this fall. And I'm a member of the Tree of Maryland, Wicomico County Youth Advisory Board. And I just kind of wanted to come to you guys today and just say hey and tell you guys like what we're about. So basically, our board is state funded, and we are like, Wicomico County received a grant to kind of form our board, and a few other counties did as well: Washington, Allegheny, Dorchester, Somerset, and Worcester. So yeah, and I just wanted to kind of come up here and say, we've been trying to do like a whole bunch of really cool activities in our community, and just kind of try to help address some of the health disparities that exist in this rural community. At the beginning, when we first formed our board about 2 years ago, we kind of looked at some of the health metrics in the area, and we tried to kind of hone in on like what exactly adolescents and teens in our area are kind of disproportionately affected by. So we focus on mental health, STI and STD prevention, as well as substance abuse. And we focus mainly on those areas, but we also kind of look into areas such as teen pregnancy, mindfulness, and suicide prevention, because those are other areas that teens in our community are kind of struggling with. And so far, since we have come together, we have been able to, I think, make a pretty good lasting impact on our community. We've planned various just activities and stuff. We did a mental health first aid class, I think that was a year ago or so. It was virtual, and we provided training for just adults that are in the community and deal with adolescents. And the course kind of went through like the signs and symptoms to look for in teens who might be going through a mental health struggle. We also, we did a free HIV/AIDS screening at Salisbury University. That was a lot of fun. We had plenty of information available there at the screening. There was like games and stuff. It was super cool. We also did a ribbon forming ceremony at SU as well. In addition to that, we've done mental health awareness paint nights and game nights, which were really popular, and we plan on doing a lot more of those in the future. I know a lot of my friends came out to that. It was super exciting, a lot of fun, and we plan to do a lot more activities like this in the future. So I just wanted to kind of come up here and say, hey. And I encourage you guys, if you want, to go check out our social media pages. We do have an Instagram. Do we have Facebook? Yeah, we have a Facebook as well. And I believe it's at True You Maryland SBY. I think that's the handle. But yeah, so yeah.
Could you state your name again, please?
Oh,
Thank
Alexis Davis.
Thank you.
I'll just note too, Alexis was at our Rotary Club a few weeks ago, was a recipient of our Rotary Scholarship. So congratulations.
Very good.
Hello, my name's Gino Lowe. I'm here representing Wicomico County Farm Bureau. I'm the current president. And board of directors have basically sent me here to,
Look too big to sing down.
anybody knows me, public speaking is not my thing. But I'm president, so here I am. The concerns we have with the DAF. Well, you know, I have talked with several of you before about it, but we're quickly becoming a collector for everybody else's waste out of these plants. You know, it's not something that's generated on the farm. It's something that's generated in a processing plant, and then, you know, we're getting it from Virginia because Virginia classifies it as a biosolid. Won't let them put it on, but a very few weeks window, and then it has setbacks and all that. But inexplicably, it can come here, and all of a sudden it's okay. Inexplicably, our MDE doesn't want to, you know, regulate it. MDA doesn't want to touch it. Farm Bureau has kicked it down the road for 2 or 3 years. We didn't want to really step out and say anything against it, but there is a few farmers that are using it, but in general, it's very few that are applying it. That is not the main issue. The main issue is now we're becoming a housing place for the stuff, for this liquid stuff. And I want to step back and say this is nothing personal against the 2 or 3 that are doing it. I've had lots of conversations with them. I'm good friends with them. We just agree to disagree on this one. This should not be in a residential area. And by the way, now we have 2. Whether you realize it or not, we have a second one. Once the Linkwood facility had problems earlier, I guess it was late last year, early this year, the Harcum Dairy Farm slurry store now is holding DAF also. Whether there was any permits or anything about that, I don't know, but it is, I'm told, you know, being used for that now. So now we have 2 locations that the residents are having to endure the odors and all the things that go with it. And I won't take any more of your time, but Mr. Davis, the other night I was late getting in and having dinner by myself, and I caught the debate you had with the other people running for county executive. And you had a comment, and I was like, I agree with you 100%. You said, don't be coming in this county and moving into country and then telling us, you know, that this stuff is, you know, and I agree with you 100%. But we have all these residents that were here, and all of a sudden, they had a tank plop down in their backyard, and it just doesn't seem right. Thank you for consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Lowe.
I didn't come with many notes. My name's David Kenny, Porter Mill Road. Lynette's my wife, and we have tolerated the stink tank for 3 years. Recent comments by somebody here from the Planning and Zoning Commission stated that they had rode by the tank and saw nothing wrong with it, thought it looked fine. And that really bothered me. You cannot make a judgment on something like that, that has that impact in our community or anybody else's community without living it. I'm so glad Gino decided that he would come and speak tonight. And I've talked with Gino and some of the other members of the Executive Committee of Farm Bureau, and surprisingly, well, not really surprisingly, we all were thinking the same thing. This should be a commercial product, and it should stay at the place it's made. We don't have the power over other counties to make them keep it, but we do have the power to say, no, don't bring it here. The other night, it was 1:30. I finally woke up from being asleep in my chair to make my way to the bedroom. There was a DAF truck coming down the road all night long. Now, I'm probably 250 foot from the road, and the noise was not bad, but there's plenty of houses right along the road, so I know they had to hear those tankers beating up and down the road all night long. I don't mind if a chicken truck comes by or a feed truck, you understand that stuff, but these are just constant. You know, we pay our property taxes, and I think our property taxes on our house alone is around $3,000, give or take. Haven't got this year's bill yet, so it's hard to tell you what it's going to be. I would challenge you to find out how much property tax is coming out of that piece of property and that tank, to see if it is even close to what the residents are paying in property taxes. Because what I see is a lot of road repair. The county just spent a tremendous amount of money fixing Riggin Road, which needed it. And it is a super highway now, and I'm telling you, it's really nice. But I'm not sure that it would have been fixed this quickly or this good if it hadn't been for all the truck traffic and complaints they were getting about the truck traffic. The edge of Porter Mill Road in front of the tank, you can ride down there and look at it. It's being torn up by the trucks coming in and out of the tank site. The road's not wide enough for the trucks to turn in and out properly, so they're getting off to the side and the road's breaking up along the edge. It's getting worse all the time. So here's something that I really don't understand, and I hope you'll think about this. We have lived it for the 3 years. We have a lot of information about this product and the process and everything that goes on with it. And you have the Farm Bureau, the Wicomico County Farm Bureau, that knows about the ag issue and can speak to that. So why in the world is planning and zoning and the county council sitting down with the two groups and talking about it and trying to come up with a plan that will satisfy everybody? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kenny.
My name is Charles Stegman. I'm a resident of Wicomico County, speaking on behalf of the Wicomico Environmental Trust on the DAF waste storage proposal. We remain very concerned about the legislative proposal that emerged from the Planning Commission. We believe the council should be very concerned as well. The 3 million gallon DAF waste storage tank on Porter Mill Road has revealed to all of us the problems with storing this waste openly in inappropriate locations with inadequate protections. The serious public and environmental health risks to our wells, surface waters, the traffic safety issues, and the harm to quality of life. As neighbors have testified repeatedly, and as the wet documentary on this situation showed, the tank produces odors so noxious they deprive residents of the use of their properties. Risks of spillage from tanker accidents, tank overflow, or rupture of the tank's glass lining with nothing to prevent contamination of neighbors' private wells and our shared surface water, and dangerous tanker traffic at all hours on small local roads with safety risks to motorists, cyclists, pedestrians, overturned tankers, and extensive road damage. Already, Porter Mill Road neighbors have documented tankers with DAF waste arriving from Delaware, Virginia, and Pennsylvania, as well as other counties in Maryland. As other jurisdictions in the region increasingly restrict the location and manner of such storage, the volume of open DAF storage in Wicomico County is sure to grow unless we adopt appropriate protections. In fact, let's be honest, the current proposal does nothing to prevent a recurrence of the Porter Mill Road tank situation. It imposes no meaningful restrictions. Instead, it blesses the proliferation of DAF waste storage beside rural residences throughout the county. The proposed legislation is not a responsible option, and the county should not go along with it. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Bob Hocutt. I live in Salisbury. I'd like to add a couple of points on behalf of the Wicomico Environmental Trust on the DAF waste storage proposal, of which you're hearing a bit tonight. And I'll be somewhat repetitive of what you have already heard, but we'll be brief. The DAF waste storage issue is not about agriculture. We appreciate the importance of agriculture in the county's economy, but the issue before you here is not agriculture or the right to farm. It's the proper zoning of waste management, which is a profitable nationwide commercial business. Purdue's Salisbury plant is the only known source of DAF waste in this county. However, Purdue has signed a 20-year contract to have its DAF processed at an enclosed anaerobic digestion facility near Seaford. This means that the only DAF waste, as has been said before, this means that the only DAF waste at issue would be trucked in from other counties or states for storage here with virtually no restriction. Why would the council want to make our county a magnet for imported DAF waste? Concerns about DAF waste storage in industrial zones can be addressed. The city council representative on the planning commission persuaded others on the commission that the storage of DAF waste in industrial zones should not be permitted because it's so noxious that it could make those zones unattractive for future industrial development. Of course, that's a concern. But given the nature of DAF waste, we understand why this could be a concern for the city of Salisbury and other municipalities with adjacent industrial areas. At least we now all agree that open DAF waste is not a good neighbor. Fortunately, a ready solution to this conundrum has already been identified by Mr. Hastings. Enclosed anaerobic digestion of the sort embraced by Sussex County. He recommended this in the council's first work session on the commission's proposal that avoids all the harms of open DAF storage. WET and others have evaluated the anaerobic digestion facility that Purdue will use for its DAF waste. And we joined the Delmarva Chicken Association and Purdue in publicly supporting it. This process will eliminate odors, avoid watershed pollution, produce organic compost, and capture methane for biogas. We commend this approach to those concerned about the storage of DAF waste in industrial zones. Thank you.
Good evening. Just 3 more minutes from wet. I'm Carol Donahue. I live in Whitehaven, grew up in Salisbury. The Wicomico Environmental Trust has been advocating the responsible regulation of DAP storage for 2 years now, as you know. And at this council's legislative session last June 15 a year ago, a clear majority of members agreed that DAF waste should be stored only in industrial zones with appropriate limitations. No one dissented. The council then repeatedly instructed the Planning and Zoning Department to draft legislation confirming that industrial zoning would be required for DAF waste storage, which they finally did on the 3rd try. The very different proposal before you tonight was developed under the guidance of the Planning and Zoning Department, which is now coming before you this evening, hoping to persuade you to follow the commission in embracing it. But this proposal would put agricultural zone residents of almost 3/4 of our county's land surface and a majority of our residents and voters at risk of having DAF waste stored right next door. It's not clear why the council would want to endorse that. The council has, or the county generally, has avoided all public discussion of what current law provides, citing litigation by the neighbors of the Porter Mill Road tank. And as a trained attorney, I understand those concerns. However, the neighbors have now lost their case, not on the zoning law issues, but on a procedural filing deadline issue that county officials asserted after telling them they had no right to appeal. So they missed the 30-day window, and the county has persuaded the court that that was the deadline. Anyway, the litigation being behind us, I think it's now time for all of us to acknowledge, as some of you well appreciate, that our current zoning code treats DAF waste tanks and any other structure storing decomposing organic waste as a composting facility that must be located in the I-2 heavy industrial zone. This point is relevant because I think it probably explains why the Planning and Zoning Department is so intent on passing the legislation that would require agricultural zoning of DAF waste storage. Their erroneous interpretation of our current law would then become real law, and tens of thousands of additional county residents would be put at greater risk under that approach. It's not clear from the public record who, if anyone, would benefit from that approach. But the Planning and Zoning Department continues to advocate this as the right result. The department will assert that the requirement of a Board of Zoning Appeals approval for each DAF waste storage permit will protect residents. But I think we all know that's a mere fig leaf, because we all know that the Board of Zoning Appeals has a long track record in this county of approving virtually all requests in the agricultural zone with few meaningful restrictions. It's clear that deferring all decisions to the board without adequate legislative standards would allow excessive discretion and risk discriminatory determinations. We submit that the council got this exactly right the first time, only a year ago, and nothing has changed. So we submit that the council now needs to step up and provide the legislative policy leadership that's needed to protect the residents of this county. We respectfully submit that that is your prerogative and your responsibility. and we remain optimistic that you'll do the right thing. Thank you for your time.
Any other public comments? Okay. That concludes public comments. Council comments. Larry?
Yes, sir. Last Thursday, myself and Mr. Cannon was there at Brad Belichico's retirement party for the Tri-County Council. He served 10 years with the Tri-County Council. Prior to that, he was the president and CEO of the Salisbury Area Chamber of Commerce, so we've had a lot of work with him. And prior to the Salisbury Chamber of Commerce, he served in the U.S. Air Force, and he was a lieutenant colonel, so he has a vast amount of experience, but now he wants to retire, so we gave him a proclamation for that. So it was a nice event for him. A lot of people showed up. And yesterday, Allen Lions Club and the Allen Fire Department put on the 4th of July parade, the annual parade they do every year. It's a very nice event. And former county executive Rick Pollitt, he deserves credit for putting it on. A lot of people showed up. It was a good parade, and if you missed it, you missed a good time. So.
Cool.
I wanted to thank everyone for coming out and giving public comment on the different topics that we had. This is how we make the best decisions. We have community engagement. And I did want to take note of the of the calls that I've received about the speeding on Nanacoke Road and the 2 accidents that happened. So I hope that there'll be some community outreach to get that resolved. Thank you.
Josh?
I just want to take a moment. Of course, unfortunately, our community lost a really important individual. My neighbor, Colonel Bob Cook, passed away last week. He was, of course, well into his 90s, but he was just an amazing human being. I don't think we could all. He was at the core of so many great Wicomico institutions, and he helped start or was a big part of so many, including the YMCA, SWED, Junior Achievement, the Community Foundation, Salisbury Housing Service. I mean, I could go on and on. This is an individual who is just was the epitome of a community or a public servant. Unfortunately, well, I just say thoughts with the family. He's a really amazing individual, and I hope us as a council will figure out a way to further recognize his great service in life.
Yeah, actually, I was going to mention the passing of Mr. Cook. I'm actually the current chair of the Greater Salisbury Committee, and that's actually what brought him to our community. He was our first director of the Greater Salisbury Committee and served for 25 years. And Josh mentioned a lot of his accomplishments, but his fingerprints are all over this community. So, he ran the race very well, and he left a very positive mark on our community. We also lost another stalwart of our community, Jack Graham. Jack Graham was very involved in our community for his entire lifetime, and he was an architect with George Miles and Buer professionally, but served numerous roles throughout our community, and he also left his fingerprints in a lot of places. So, it's been sort of a tough week from that respect, but also both of these individuals, certainly served our citizens and our communities very well.
Yes, I wanted to mention Colonel Bob Cook also. About 3 years ago, I had the opportunity to do an interview with Colonel Cook on PAC 14, and you can look that up if you want to. It's Eastern Shore Veterans, their honor, and it was about an hour-long video. He had an interesting career in the military. It's anybody that's likes a history about World War II, they should watch that. He was pretty interesting fella, and Josh and Bill mentioned everything he accomplished in Wicomico County. Friend of mine said he talked to him about 5 years ago now. Mr. Cook died at 96, I think it was. Isn't that what it was? And wanted to know if he was going to be to a meeting. He said no, he was going skiing in the Alps. So that was, it takes a lot of endurance for a 90-year-old person to go skiing in the Alps.
So we went.
So anyway, but that's a really good interview if anybody wants to watch it. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Any other council comments? Under presidential comments, yes, Colonel Cook was a very unique individual. I asked one time Dave Ryan to send me a biography for him because the Tri-County Council wanted to give him an award, and it was literally 3 pages long of all the accomplishments this one individual had done throughout this county and the lower Eastern Shore area, benefiting the state of Maryland as a whole. Very unique individual. I was very fortunate to have had a chance to visit him over the last couple of weeks. And really what you take away from him is this was an individual that you could certainly tell that he was somewhat physically challenged, of course. You knew that. But he was, to talk to him, he was 100% engaging, completely. No matter what topic you spoke to him about, he would light up immediately and he would engage in that conversation. And I thought it was so great to hear how, or to witness just how strong an individual he was, even up to the end, which exemplified how he was throughout his entire life. And I believe it was probably 3 days later that he passed. So he is a great man. I'm hoping that we can, as Josh suggested, find some means by which to recognize him on a long-term basis for Wicomico County. As far as the comments, I really appreciate everybody's input tonight. We recognize the DAF tank has been a very difficult issue for Wicomico County, and it's a fine balance that the council tries to, I think, weigh. I personally wish that, the council found out about this even after the community found out about it, which I think was a bit surprising. I think it took everyone by surprise. So we can't put the toothpaste back in the tube, but I do think we have to find some resolution that's going to serve the purpose of everyone and be the benefit of the county as a whole. We don't like to compromise the industry to a certain extent, but then again, we have members of the industry that also say this may not be a good fit for the county. We've met with state officials. We've been out on the location. We've challenged them as far as composting. We've challenged them as to whether or not this was even an agricultural additive. And the state seems to take the position that it is, and it checks all the boxes. I personally have never been really convinced that it checks those boxes. Like, I don't think it fills the box in all the way, but we'll be working with that and with the help of planning and zoning to try to iron this out a little more carefully. That being said, I also toured, thanks to Josh, as it was mentioned earlier, we toured the bioenergy DevCo plant in Seaford. My hope and my feelings is that this anaerobic digestion unit will address the DAF tanks even for Wicomico County, and I'm hoping that this product will transition to that plant, and we may not have to deal with that in Wicomico County once it's established. Can't say for 100%, but that's what I've been led to believe. But we still have to charge to do what we're responsible to do and address this issue, and of course that's why we're having a work session coming up. The last thing I would say is, as Larry and Joe touched on, the Allen Parade, we went there this weekend. I figured out why there's a 3-day holiday, because there's too much stuff to do. You have to have 3 days to fit it all in Wicomico County, because you have the Allen Parade, you have the Hebron Carnival, you have the fireworks in Hebron, then you have them in Willards, then you have them in Salisbury, and then you have them in Shorebridge Stadium. So there was no shortness or whatever the word might be. There was plenty to do over this long weekend to celebrate the great country that we live in, and I enjoyed it immensely. With that being said, I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn so that we can go into open work session. Second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion's carried. Meeting's adjourned. First item on the open work session is the recommendation from the Salisbury Wicomico Planning and Zoning regarding the liquid organic fertilizer storage text amendment, the DAF tank. You gonna have a presentation for the, a slide presentation for the screen?
Yes.
Okay.
Good evening.
You could please.
Council members,
everybody
state my name.
Names and
Okay.
get that out of the way for us.
We'll start with Paul Pauls.
Oh, Paul Wilbur, Wicomico attorney.
Lori Carter, Planning Director.
Clark Meadows, zoning administrator.
Good evening. Staff has prepared a brief presentation to provide a roadmap of where we have been and where we are at now on the proposed tax amendment to Chapter 225 zoning. As proposed, a potential text amendment for the storage of what is commonly referred to as DAF, which is a liquid organic fertilizer produced as by product of poultry processing facilities, is being considered by the Wicomico County Council. This particular presentation will present the current code environment as well as the previous proposal provided by the Salisbury-Wicomico County Planning Commission's recommendations for the permitting of the storage of DAF on farms. I just ask that if you have any questions, you would hold them towards the end once the presentation is actually done. If you look to the slide we have here, these are the major actual components for a text amendments to the zoning code that specifically apply to a new or defining an existing land use. Other other ones that are listed is adopted and locally adopted plans and applicable sections of the county code, including zoning, building, and the right to farm. It's important to know that these are what the zoning text amendments are actually considering. Okay. Current legislative construct. Here we have the examples of what the use, zoning, setbacks, and approval by right. It shows what, again, number one, we'll be talking about anything related to the actual storage of equipment, which is a barn, feed, fertilizer, silos for storage of soybeans and grains. Also includes a manure shed. Currently, the storage of the DAF for use on the farm field is actually permitted by right in various zoning districts. If we were to continue, I would show you the zoning map towards the end, what this actually pertains to. We also look at setbacks. The actual prescribed distances from lot lines as well as height limits, front, actually varies from 35 to 75 feet, depending upon the district, whereas the side, 10 feet, rear, 35 feet, and maximum height of 35 feet are actually consistent for all of the zoning districts where permitted. As it relates to under the approval, that is by right and is actually conducted at the staff level as a part of the building permit process. This requires no approval by the Wicomico County Board of Appeals or the Salisbury-Wicomico County Planning Commission. The next slide will show you what is the proposed map. It basically shows and it illustrates exactly the areas in which the storage of the DAF is currently permitted and not permitted. The majority of these areas that are located in green are within the A1 zoning district. However, other districts permit ag operations. The areas in mauve represent, which is these areas here, they represent zoning where it is allowed by right. The majority of this area is in the heavy and industrial zone, and it's located within designated growth areas. So when we look at what is actually was proposed originally, the actual definition itself is not limited to just DAF. It impacts silos and other ag storage, including the manure, grains, and soy beans, all fertilizers and soil amendments. Additionally, it's actually applicable to above ground open top storage structures. It does not address the, when it relates to the closed top storage, it does not address anything related to the actual temporary storage or anything related to lagoons. So zoning, as it stands, is proposed, is not actually consistent. Should the product come directly from a poultry processing plant, and additionally, it occur prior to the distribution and use on a farm. Prior to the land application, the product will be treated via a mechanical process, which is called the dissolved air flotation, which everyone calls it as being DAF. And then it is actually provided to the end user farmer to apply directly on the farm. The other parts are, as it relates to the purpose of the zoning district, I-1, light industrial, to provide areas for light industrial development, including manufacturing, wholesaling, research and development activities. Basically, the performance standards have been established to ensure that there is no use in the permitted, which may be detrimental because of odor, smoke, dust, toxic fumes, fire, noise, and explosions, or any other hazard chemicals. So these are what was actually proposed originally when we first had started. As it relates to the I-2 heavy industrial, to encourage industrial growth in the county by providing areas suitable for the development of heavy manufacturing, assembling, or industrial processing activities that have characteristics that are similar to any detriment to operate within these particular districts. See, from here, the standards and the restrictions established for the districts are intended to actually protect both nearby areas and in industries which propose to locate or already have located within this district. setbacks. All of the development must, all development almost triple the current requirements for the I-1 and I-2 zoning districts. Approval. Basically, that has to be done through special exception by the Wicomico County Board of Appeals. Other, basically is stating that the open-top storage tank created or that was erected prior to the enactment of this legislation is to permit by the county may continue as a non-conforming use. And I think I basically skipped. I do apologize. It's moved on me. I'm sorry. I do apologize. It moved on me. I do apologize. Sorry about that. Let's go back to the zoning on the light and heavy zoning districts. As it's a part of the county's designated growth areas and included as the area of future annexations and the considerations for Delmar, Salisbury, and Fruitland. Also, these are the most densely populated areas. So this is as it relates to, my slide keeps moving. I don't know why, what happened here. I apologize, guys, I really do. Sorry about that. Okay, let's start this again. So, other areas of actually concerns is the front on the collector roads and nonconformity use. So we went through the to actually define it. Zoning, I-1 and I-2 setbacks is what was actually proposed up to 300 feet. Approval was less than 150,000 gallons permitted by right, and then more than 150,000 gallons permitted by special exceptions. Under that particular proposal was direct access from a collector street and an open-top storage tank erected prior to the enactment of this legislation. So then this takes us to, if it moves, to what the Planning Commission actually recommended. And what they recommended, that this particular map illustrates the first proposed text amendment in which the storage of DAF will be actually permitted or not. And the majority of the areas in the mauve color are within the A1 zoning district and other districts permitting ag operations, which would not permit the storage of DAF as a part of a farming operation. The areas in the green, which is these areas here, represent the light and heavy industrial zoning. And please, you can also disregard there the airport zoning district A2, which would be the mauve area as well. The light and heavy zoning districts as a part of the county's designated growth areas, as I said earlier, included the areas of future annexation, actual considerations, that would be Delmar, Salisbury, and Fruitland. And also there are the most populated and dense areas of the county. So let's move to the Planning and Zoning Actual Commission recommendations. So they have use, zoning is A1, setbacks 200 feet from all property lines, 400 feet from any residential dwelling not located in the same dwelling, schools, place of the religious assembly. It also included nursing homes, daycare centers, manufactured home, park subdivisions of 10 or more lots, or an approved septic system location to be served at that particular of any of those actually above. Approval is by special exception by Wicomico County Board of Appeals. And the other discussions include an open-top storage tank erected prior to the enactment of this legislation, and it is permitted by the county and may continue as a non-conforming use in its current location regardless of the zoning district. So that was the Planning Commission's recommendations. Here we have a map that shows the zoning. If enacted as advanced by the actual commission, any DAF storage for use on a farm will be considered only in the A1 zoning district, which actually appears in this area, which is all white on the zoning map. It is important to remember that this is would have to be done through the actual Board of Appeals based on achieving certain criteria on a per-site evaluation and conducted during an open process for public comments, which I'm sure those were some of the things that some have had some actual concerns about. Right now, we just want to highlight, and we know that this, is it's not anyone trying to pass any type of buck, but it is the facts. The appropriate authority is the State of Maryland Department of Ag, and they're looking at everything related to the safety use field and some of the actual inspections. What is Wicomico? Storage, zoning code, district setbacks, and all of the development standards, and the building code structure. Odor, flies, dust, smoke, noise, protected in A1 by 186 right to farm. And that is a fact. Now, what is the next steps? I'm sure you guys have had a chance, council have had a chance to look at the recommendations, the packet that was submitted to you some time ago. This is the report that was basically provided to the Planning Commission on December the 16th on 2021. I believe it's in your packet as well, with all of the comments and actual concerns. But we do have next steps, and that is contingent upon your actual consensus, and that is whether or not you would actually proceed, being able to schedule a public hearing so you'll be able to hear the actual concerns from all of those in regards to this proposed legislation. But this is just the information of where we've been, what we have gone through, and where we are now. And if there's any questions, we're here to do the best that we possibly can to answer those. But again, I am very thankful for the commission. Staff has only been assisting as we do, as it relates to facts that we have as planners, as it relates to our comprehensive a plan. We are using those particular tools and the existing zoning code. But this is where we are at this particular time. And like I said, we're happy to entertain any questions that you may have at this time.
I got a question. From where it looks like what's being proposed, it looks like 95% of the county can hold one of these tanks. And it looks like it's going to be approved by the Board of Special Appeals. So that takes us out of the picture, so we don't have nothing to do with it. So this is all done without us doing anything.
I want to make sure I understand your question, Mr.
If what's
Davis.
proposed, was proposed by the Special Board of Appeals, it's going to take the council out of the picture, and it looks like 95% of the county can get one of those tanks?
What was recommended by the Planning Commission for the council's consideration is that the tanks would be allowed only by special exception
Through them?
through the process of a public hearing with the County Board of Appeals.
So that takes the county council out of the picture?
The application or request for a tank would not be a matter for the council if the proposed legislation were adopted.
The only involvement by the council is on the legislative end. Then by the proposed legislation, then, as Clark says, it would go to the Board of Zoning Appeals for a public hearing.
Feed on Mr. Davis's comment, I think actually statistically, and you all can probably state this better than I can, but isn't it, it's somewhere between 70 and 75% of the county zone A1.
Yeah.
That's accurate.
Yes.
Yeah, I can't remember
Yes.
what that exact
Yes.
number is, 73 point
Some like that, yes.
something or another, but anyhow, between 70 and 75%. So essentially, what the planning commission is saying, that 75% of our county is eligible for a DAF tank, yes, by special exception, but special exception means you have to, meet that criteria. And if you can check those boxes for that criteria, you have to be approved if you check all those boxes. So, and I'll say this, because I said this on day one, when we had our first work session. I said it on the second work session, I've been, and thank you all, because you've invited us to come in, and I came in, met with Keith, we had a lengthy discussion about these proposals, et cetera. And I'll say what I said at every one of these work sessions. This is a industrial product. It is not produced on the farm. It's produced in an industrial setting, brought to these tanks. That's why it should be in the I-2, as this council, the majority of this council did recommend that. And, I know the planning commission stated, well, that's a very limited amount of area. Exactly. It's supposed to be a limited, I-2 is supposed to be a limited amount of area. You don't want your county to be the, I hate to say the dumping ground for, for industrial waste products, but landfills and, and other heavy industrial uses, heavy manufacturing, et cetera, that goes into, the heavy industrial zone is supposed to be limited, because it produces odors, because it produces noise, because it produces heavy truck traffic, which that sounds like that's exactly what, the people in the county are complaining about with the DAF storage tank. So, I just repeat that. It seems like a lot of the reasoning that the planning commission used to actually put it in the A1, the irony of that is, those are exactly the reasons it should be an I-2, not in A1. So.
Well, one thing I will say publicly, I think that there is a misunderstanding that anything that comes before the Board of Appeals is a carte blanche. That's not true.
And I'm not saying, it's carte blanche at all. But if you do all the work and you meet all the criteria and, you do check the boxes for all the criteria that's required to receive your special appeal, it has to be granted. It can't legally be denied if you meet all the criteria. That doesn't make it a carte blanche at all, because it can be challenging to meet all those criteria. But if you do, it has to be approved.
I think that the opportunity that the council has, staff has been working with the commission again, but the commission basically, based upon what they saw and what they looked at as far as the maps, even staff, and I can say this, when we first look at this after our last meeting, and that's probably about, sometimes you begin to lose track, maybe 4 or 5 or 6 meetings in, Clark and I had met with you guys before, and we first ourselves even looked at I-1 and I-2 and we said, yes, this makes sense. It wasn't until we started doing the planning exercise. And once we started doing that particular exercise, that's when we began to see when you start looking at maps and start looking at certain things, we started to see a different side of that. And that was shared with the commission. That's all that was. That was saying, hey, this is more information, and that's it. But you guys can make it as restrictive as you want. That's why it's here as, am I actually correct?
That's correct.
You're here to, you can make it as, if you want to add, if you just want to say for, pretty much, however you decide, you can make the necessary modifications, accept or not. But this is what the commission, after they looked at it and done their reviews and looked at all the info, this is what they had come up with as a recommendation.
The reason that the industrial zone was discounted, can you share that with the public as to what the commission's concerns were, as to why that wasn't a suitable solution?
Well, once the commission looked at it, again, it goes back to, and then I'll ask Mr. Meadows to elaborate as it relates to zoning. But again, when you look at the maps, they basically saw that, again, we're dealing with dense populations, and that was a concern. So that basically it. It was very simple when you're starting to see where this could possibly go. It was just, again, do you want this in dense populations?
Well, and I'll actually make a comment regarding that, because our I-2, I mean, the northerly block was a concern.
Right in here, yep.
More because where it backs up to.
You have Target, you have,
Right.
you have a lot of housing, you have a lot of
Right,
multifamily,
Because it backs up to a lot of the commercial, et cetera.
and commercial as well.
Our other I-2 is where our landfill is one of the primary areas. Which
So-
is hardly a dense.
And that would have worked.
With a lot of vacant land around it.
It's just, again, when you're looking at all of the areas, there's some that would work a lot better than others. But in regards
And
to,
that's why you have special, you can still have your special exceptions still in the I-2. And that gives them that ability to deal with those more concentrated areas in that northerly block, as opposed to the areas that are in and around, like, once again, I'll use that example of the landfill I-2, which is much different than the I-2 areas.
Sure.
But you still got some areas when you get closer to along the railroad there, heading north toward Delmar, that's still Mr. Wilbur's old stomping areas. That's still kind of pretty rural.
Agricultural.
Still
It's
pretty
agricultural,
agricultural. Right.